Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're looking at a truly incredible geographic marvel. Picture this. You're standing at Spain's stunning Mirador del Estrecho viewpoint, right? You look straight across the water and boom, there's Mount Jebel Musa in Morocco. You're literally standing in Europe and looking directly at Africa. The gap separating these two massive continents, the Strait of Gibraltar, is just this tiny, incredibly narrow stretch of water. It's exactly 14 kilometers wide. To put that into perspective, if you were driving and didn't hit traffic, you'd cover that distance in under half an hour. Easy, right? So creating a physical link here should be a total no-brainer. Okay, let's dive into this. This question has literally baffled people for generations. Why on earth hasn't anyone bridged this tiny 14-kilometer gap? And, it's definitely not a lack of modern technology. I mean, think about it. The Channel Tunnel connecting the UK to France, that's a massive 50 kilometers long, and we built that back in the 90s in just 6 years. Or look at China. They recently built the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Sea Bridge, which is 4 times longer than this gap, in less than a decade. We literally have companies drilling 57-kilometer tunnels through the solid, impossible rock of the Swiss Alps. And yet this 14-kilometer stretch, completely unconquered. And make no mistake, guys, bridging this gap isn't just some local pipe dream for Spain and Morocco. It matters to the entire world. This tiny choke point is quite literally the lifeline of the global economy. Every single year, roughly 100,000 ships and 18,000 oil tankers pass through this incredibly narrow corridor. We're talking about a third of the entire world's oil and gas, half of all global trade, and a staggering 80% of the European Union's merchandise trade. Electronics, raw materials, cars, all of it squeezing through this tiny 14-kilometer crack. So connecting Europe and Africa physically, it would create an absolutely unprecedented strategic and economic advantage. Section 1. A century of failed dreams. Now, what's really interesting about this is that brilliant minds have been trying and failing miserably to conquer this strait for well over a century. Every single plan either gets stuck on paper or literally sinks to the bottom of the sea. Take this absolutely wild concept from the 1920s. A German architect named Hermann Sergel came up with Project Atlantropa. His grand idea? Build a massive hydroelectric dam right across the Strait of Gibraltar, lower the entire Mediterranean Sea by about 660 feet, and literally reclaim enough land to physically merge Europe and Africa into a giant supercontinent. To keep global shipping afloat, he actually designed a system of massive lock chambers, kind of like the Panama Canal, so ships could safely transition between the high waters of the Red Sea and his newly drained Mediterranean. But despite his super passionate storytelling, the astronomical costs of building 7 giant dams and the, quite frankly, terrifying ecological disaster of draining a sea meant this ambitious dream died with him in 1952.
Let's fast forward a bit. Democracy arrived in Spain in the late 70s, which paved the way for a historic 1979 agreement with Morocco to finally bridge this gap. But man, the reality of the strait fought back hard. In 1991, they sent out this survey ship called the Nautilus just to drill 5 meters into the seabed to test the rock. And it failed. Completely. The very next year, another ship, the Poulis, gave it a shot. The drill rod literally just snapped off. The ship vibrated violently, and they had to abort the mission. It was almost as if nature itself was rejecting the whole idea. Survey ships couldn't even drop an anchor or get clear sonar readings of the ocean floor. It actually took until 1997, after countless painful trials, for researchers to just finalize 2 potential routes on a map.
Section 2. Eugene Sui's floating snake. So while all those survey teams were out there struggling, this American architect named Eugene Sui was watching from afar. And he decided, you know what, let's just throw the traditional engineering rulebook right out the window for this 14-kilometer route. Sui designed something straight out of a sci-fi movie. He envisioned this massive, floating marine snake. Instead of boring huge concrete pillars into the seabed, his bridge would actually float. It would start in Spain, dip underwater into a floating tunnel so giant cargo ships could safely pass right over it, and then pop back up on the center of the ocean as a massive 3-mile-wide artificial floating city. We are talking a 24-lane roadway, wind farms, waterfalls, public gardens, even a 23-story building. Built with this futuristic waterproof electrolytic concrete and anodized aluminum, its flexible spine would be tethered by triple cables, letting it absorb the ocean's movement like a giant fish. It wouldn't just be a bridge, it would basically be the 8th wonder of the world, a destination all on its own. But then, well, came the reality check. $10 billion. That is roughly 85,000 crore rupees.
The staggering price tag of this floating city was a massive problem. But honestly, the second problem was even bigger. The survey ships finally managed to get some detailed geological data about that short 14-kilometer route, and what they found hiding down there killed Sui's dream instantly.
Section 3. Nature's Ultimate Obstacle Course.
See, the reason no one has bridged this gap isn't because of a lack of imagination. It's because this 14-kilometer stretch is quite literally nature's ultimate obstacle course. Let's compare the geography for a second. The famous English Channel Tunnel works because its deepest point is only about 180 meters, and the seabed is made of this solid, really strong chalk rock. But the shortest route across the Strait of Gibraltar, it is 900 meters deep. That's the equivalent of stacking 3 Eiffel Towers on top of each other underwater, just to reach the surface. Building a bridge would require hundreds of pillars that tall, and digging a tunnel 900 meters below sea level? Yeah, practically impossible. And crazy enough, the depth isn't even the worst part. The seabed down there is covered in these massive craters filled with breccia and clay. Now, breccia is arguably the weakest geological material you could ever try to build on. Imagine trying to anchor a colossal, insanely heavy bridge pillar into a base of wet, porous mud filled with loose pebbles. If you try to drill into it, the soil can just suddenly collapse, which would bring the entire bridge down in a split second.
So engineers are basically facing 5 fatal nightmares on this short route. 1, that extreme 900-meter depth. 2, the super weak breccia clay. 3, right underneath that clay is a layer of impossibly hard rock that just shreds drill bits. 4, any bridge needs 70 meters of above water clearance so massive ships aren't blocked. But the most terrifying obstacle? That's number 5. Right beneath this strait is a massive, active tectonic fault line where the African and Eurasian plates are constantly grinding against each other. This is the exact same fault line that caused the infamous Lisbon earthquake, which tragically killed an estimated 60,000 people. Any bridge pillars built here would be scattered like a house of cards during even a mild tremor, and running a tunnel through an active major fault line, that is pretty much the greatest engineering challenge on Earth. Oh, and we definitely can't forget the water itself. This strait is a literal choke point where warm, light water from the Mediterranean Sea forcefully collides with freezing, heavy water from the Atlantic Ocean. Because these waters have completely different densities, the warm water aggressively rises while the cold water sinks. This creates violent upwelling and convection currents. When you combine those underwater tornadoes with surface ocean currents of 11 kilometers per hour and screaming surface winds of over 100 kilometers per hour, well, it becomes pretty obvious why those early survey ships couldn't even drop anchor without spinning totally out of control. Section 4. The Threshold Tunnel Plan. Faced with these absolutely impossible realities on the short 14-kilometer route, engineers in the early 2000s realized they needed a completely new strategy. And this brilliantly illustrates what they figured out. A 2005 survey by a ship called the Kingfisher revealed a huge breakthrough. By totally abandoning the short 14-kilometer canyon route and moving just slightly west to the 28-kilometer threshold route, the whole engineering nightmare suddenly became manageable. Sure, the distance doubled, but look at the depth. It drops from a terrifying 900 meters to a much safer 300 meters. The dangerous clay soil layer is thinner, and the rock beneath is manageable, not drill-breaking. By choosing this longer route, they solved 3 of the 5 fatal problems instantly. The new plan was finalized. Forget a bridge. They would build an underwater railway system utilizing 3 tunnels, 2 for trains and a central one just for service and repairs. The potential impact of this finalized rail tunnel plan is just massive. Right now, if you want to travel from Casablanca in Morocco to Madrid in Spain, it takes about 12 pretty arduous hours. This new rail link would slash that travel time down to an incredible 5.5 hours. It would completely revolutionize passenger travel and allow for an absolute explosion of fast, super efficient freight trading between the 2 continents. Section 5. The Geopolitical Roadblock. So everything was finally set. In 2006, the governments of Spain and Morocco issued tenders, and a renowned Swiss engineering firm officially won the contract. Construction was fully expected to start by 2008. But historical and territorial disputes intervened. Spain controls 2 territories, Ceuta and Melilla, which sit directly on the Moroccan coast near the strait's opening. Morocco, however, claims these territories. So, in 2008, when Spain's king visited those enclaves, Morocco recalled its ambassador in protest, and the tunnel project was immediately paused. A very similar diplomatic freeze happened again in 2020, when Spain provided medical treatment to a rebel leader from Western Sahara, a move that deeply angered Morocco. So we're looking at a situation where, time and time again, the project stalls, not because of the ocean, but because of complex diplomatic relations. The result? The project has been indefinitely suspended multiple times over the years. However, the world is kind of losing its patience because, like we established at the start, the entire global economy relies heavily on this single choke point. If this shipping route were ever blocked or compromised, the economic fallout across the world would be catastrophic. And that is exactly why global superpowers, including the US, the UK, China, India, and the EU, are now putting heavy pressure on both Spain and Morocco to just figure it out and build this vital alternative link. An alternate tunnel route is rapidly becoming an absolute necessity for global trade security. Which brings us to our final takeaway, and it's a powerful one. Before building a bridge of steel and concrete, we must build a bridge of trust and understanding. You see, the 14-kilometer mystery has completely transformed. It's no longer an insurmountable engineering challenge blocked by deep waters, weak soil, or violent ocean currents. Science and engineering have actually found the path forward. Now, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. We know for a fact that we can conquer nature's impossible gap. But will political leaders ever build a bridge of diplomatic trust strong enough to actually let it happen?